Professor was telling his students the best medicine a doctor can give his patient is love. And one of the students asked him, "What if it doesn't work?" The reply was, "You enhance the dose." Now we are continuing with the responses of Dr. Nori Dattatreyudu's patients. He has given only some of them. MB from US. Sometimes tumors of the vagina can recur after years and without warning, or a second primary tumor may appear in the same organ. My patient MP experienced a vaginal tumor for the second time after being treated for primary cervical cancer. The thought that cancer invaded my body several decades ago seldom crosses my mind today. Even when it does, it seems as if it all happened to someone I knew, not me. But if I sit very still and let the emotions return, I can clearly hear a doctor saying that tests showed that I had a second primary carcinoma. How was that possible? I thought. I had convinced myself that having cancer once was like being vaccinated against its return in the future. The physician continued to describe the location and the invasive nature of the second tumor. You have very few options, he said simply. What do you mean, very few options? I wondered. I felt great. I was exercising regularly, walking more than 25 miles a week. I was no, on one of my periodic healthy eating regimens. I was successful in my career and happy and content in my personal life. The disease the doctor was describing could not be mine. Surely there was some mistake, an error in identification at the lab. But no, the biopsy slides were mine. The spring I touched from one medical specialist to another, each seemed to provide a more dire prognosis than the previous. I endured dozens of tests. After almost 2 months of searching for options, I found only two of these to be credible. I could do nothing and live for 6 to 12 months, or I could have radical surgery and live in fear of periodic infections requiring hospitalization. I scheduled the extremely radical surgery knowing that my chances for survival were very slim, and even then I had no assurances that the cancer would be eradicated from my body. Why me? I had already traveled the cancer route 10 years earlier. I was one of a third of the US population who had suffered from some type of cancer, and I felt already put in my time, as it were. It wasn't supposed to happen again, not a second primary. I had already had surgery as well as tons of rats, medical shorthand for radiation dose. As I read back over the journals I kept during that period, I am humbled and grateful, recognizing how very fortunate I was after seeing three specialists to have found yet another who would consider my situation. I met Dr. Nori and was introduced to brachytherapy. Dr. Nori carefully explained the treatment concept of brachytherapy and outlined the risks in language I could understand. He drew illustrations to explain the procedure he would design for me. He patiently answered my list of written questions but made no promises. I left that appointment to weigh the risks of brachytherapy versus months of recovery from the radical surgery planned for the following week. If the brachytherapy failed, the radical surgery remained an option, albeit with the possibility of additional complications. According to my analysis, brachytherapy offered me one good year, enough for me to get my life in order. So I cancelled the surgery and made an appointment for brachytherapy. My health insurance refused to pay for what was, at that time, still considered experimental, though it would have completely covered the expense for the months of hospitalization anticipated as a result of surgery. I have now been able to understand the rationale of this position. Luckily, the out-of-pocket costs for brachytherapy were much lower than for surgery and hospital care. Brachytherapy simply required weekly visits of less than 1 hour. It was painless, and it left my dignity intact. Here is a miracle. My second bout with cancer occurred almost 20 years ago. My life expectancy of 6 to 12 months increased to 20 years. Wow. And still, every single day, I'm thankful to be among the thousands of those in the fraternity of cancer survivors celebrating life. DK from US. DK, one of my patients who had treatment for esophageal cancer, describes his experience with diagnosis. First, I started having difficulty in swallowing. After a few months, it got worse, and I was having extreme difficulty in swallowing anything but liquids. I reported this problem to my primary care physician, and he ordered a barium X ray of my upper digestive tract. This revealed a blockage in the upper esophageal area, and shortly thereafter, an endoscopy exam confirmed my worst nightmare. I had a squamous cell tumor. The doctors at the hospital told me that the treatment for this esophageal cancer was to have my esophagus removed and that my stomach would be moved up and I would have to be fed through my neck for the rest of my life. They said that they would also remove my voice box so that the margin of tissue around the tumor would be cancer free. My wife and I were horrified and immediately began exploring other options, including non conventional treatments. A few days after we began searching this, she came across an article in the local newspaper quoting Dr. Nori, who interviewed about internal radiation treatment for cancer of the esophagus. I called immediately and made an appointment. Dr. Nori said that he could treat me with intraluminal brachytherapy only if the tumor had not spread beyond the esophagus and did the necessary tests. I was both terrified and hopeful. Terrified that I had cancer, and hopeful that it had not spread. My wife, daughter, and I were elated, even joyous, when Dr. Nori said that it was contained. With my wife's support and Dr. Nori's agreement, I decided not to have the tumor removed surgically. We would let brachytherapy do the job. DK, whose experience with diagnosis is given above, describes his treatment. My treatment lasted almost 2 months, but was not a disruption to my life. I took my treatment in the morning and went straight to work afterwards. The only side effect I experienced was that sometimes thinking clearly took more effort than it usually did. But it did not interfere with my work and went away shortly after my treatment was completed. I had no pain or complications, and Dr. Norris and the staff were so upbeat, positive, and encouraging. I'm so thankful that my cancer was treatable and that Dr. Nori encouraged me to believe that I would survive. Once you believe you can survive, you have hope. DK is currently free of cancer 20 years after brachytherapy with no compromise on the quality of his life. David's case is typical for early esophageal cancer. Obviously, treatment, quality of life, and outcome are different for those whose cancers have metastasized. It's very rewarding, however, to see so many of these patients eat again, gain weight, and thrive after treatment, and to know that many of them have significantly longer survival than they would have had in the past. Louis W. Sullivan from US, President Emeritus, Morehouse School of Medicine, US Secretary of Health and Human Services 1989 to 1993, USA. Approximately 18 years ago in 2000, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer and was referred to Dr. Nori for the treatment. Although I live in Atlanta, I flew to New York regularly over the period of several weeks to receive this therapy under the care and supervision of Dr. Nori because of his outstanding reputation in medicine and radiation oncology. The outcome was excellent. All signs of prostate cancer were eliminated, and today, some 18 years later, I remain in good health. In his clinical care, Dr. Nori showed a high degree of skill, professionalism, and compassion with his patients. He also demonstrated excellent administrative and interpersonal skills while managing his clinical and technical staff. I have known Dr. Nori for as a fellow physician, medical educator, and researcher deserving to be called a world renowned leader in oncology. EAA from West Africa. I'm a former patient. I'm a former patient of the globally esteemed radiation oncologist, Professor Dattatreyudu Nori, and I wish to provide a testimony to my life saving experience under his unparalleled professional career over a decade ago. This was written in July 2011. I write also to represent all the global patients who have been helped by the innovative treatment techniques that Dr. Nori developed over the last 35 years at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and Cornell University. In 2011, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer and I consulted several high level medical specialists across the United States of America, Africa, and the United Kingdom. All the specialists referred and directed me to Dr. Nori because of his impeccable scientific credentials and reputation as a world class pioneering radiation oncologist with a deep humanitarian spirit. My experience with Dr. Dattatreyudu was phenomenal. Despite his very busy schedules, he always made time to meet with me, very patiently listened to me, answered all my questions fully, and gave me the very best medical treatment available anywhere. He treated me using the innovative and highly regarded technique of high dose rate brachytherapy, which he is widely known to have played an instrumental role in developing. After my treatment, Dr. Nori met with me several times and explained what the post treatment prognosis is likely to be, based on his careful analysis of my specific case. I'm more than delighted to report that the outcomes have been exactly as he said they would be. I am now fully prostate cancer free, and my PSA level has fallen well below zero. It's been nothing short of a miracle. It's not surprising, therefore, that Dr. Nori has received many distinguished awards and honors around the globe. Finally, I should say that right after my operation, I was so impressed by Dr. Nori's professionalism and humanism that I wrote a special poem dedicated to him. Dr. Nori definitely merits the highest national honor that your esteemed government and his beloved native country can bestow on him. He is the best of the best in this field and a true global leader in health profession. Dr. Nouri exemplifies the Hippocratic oath in practice to the highest degree and is extraordinary in his ability to relate to all across the globe. As an African who has traveled worldwide and interacted with medical professionals on many continents, I can say for certain that Dr. Nouri is an exceptional medical scientist and care provider and is a truly inspiring, innovative, and exemplary leader in his field. Yours sincerely, Akwasi Aidu, PhD, Trust Africa, Senegal, West Africa. Closing the Gulf for Dr. Nori and Rosalind by Akwasi Aidu. It's a poem. The news came across the Atlantic. The news came across the Atlantic, breaking the oceanic sounds that drowned the dreams of trafficked middle passengers of centuries old, flooding the cerebrate with cascading sounds. Between the disbelief and the why me angst, closing the Gulf was a bridge to global city of Melang, India, Philippines, Russia, America, and nameless more visages safely spaced behind shrubs of eclectic pieces, V-necked for love, hypocritically earthed. Bonfire shaped with cloth cap, latex gloves, closed toe shoes to boot my cancer cells to pieces. The pivot of it all, as I gyrated uncontrollably, were two great souls, Dr. Nori and Rosalind, anchoring the pellets for the epic battle. His gentle smile caps a global acclaim of perfection, her unalloyed care bequeaths bouquets of roses. Together they pull back my trust of life. PG from Greece, Philip Gaitanes. I live in Athens, Greece, and in October 2006, at the age of 54, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Terrified, I immediately tried to find the best oncologist here in Greece. They all told me that the best treatment for me was to remove my prostate, that's to undergo surgery. Of the three doctors I visited right after he saw my test results, prescribed medication, which I found out was for cancer patients at their final stage of cancer. In November of 2006, I traveled with my wife to New York. I first went to Memorial Hospital where I saw a surgical oncologist. He told me that I did not need surgery. It would be better to see the world renowned cancer specialist, Dr. Nori. I saw Dr. Nori at the same time a highly knowledgeable scientist and human being, ready and willing to help his patients in every way. Dr. Nori is a pioneer in these advanced techniques and is considered the father of brachy therapy in the USA. Since then, I have been to New York to see Dr. Nori for my checkups. Turning 70 this November 22, I enjoy life more than ever with my wife, my two daughters, and two lovely grandchildren. I spend my summers at my country home on a beautiful Greek island. I'm still active as a professional engineer working for a multinational company and always think of Dr. Nori, being grateful to him for keeping me alive, for his compassion, his knowledge, his expertise, and for an outstanding treatment. C is from Argentina. My name is Carlos Sacerdote. I'm an Italian industrial engineer living in Buenos Aires, Argentina. When I was 61 years old, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2002 and was recommended to contact Dr. Dattatreyudu, as he's a pioneer and world renowned specialist in brachytherapy. I'm grateful to Dr. Nori for his courage, honesty, and commitment. I actually recognize his knowledge not only as a scientist but as a human being ready to act and help patients. In 2020, I am free of cancer. At present, my doctor in Buenos Aires, also a urologist, had decided to contact Dr. Dattatreyudu Nori and plan an exchange training program at his facility in New York. MC from US. After my examination, my gynecologist chose his words carefully. Nonetheless, I was totally unprepared for what he told me. He said that my biopsy was not benign and there was a tumor on my cervix. I stared at him, unable to think. I knew what the words meant, but my brain refused to comprehend. It was as if I were watching myself in a movie, waiting to see what I would do next. Unable to fully accept what I had just heard, my emotions numbed. I watched myself have a rational conversation with the doctor without feeling or really comprehending the meaning of the words. Later, I cried a lot, but I didn't feel sorry for myself. I also cried because I had contractions in my uterus every half hour that had me writhing in pain. MC's oncologist outlined her options. He told me that I could have a radical hysterectomy and that involved removal of the uterus, ovaries, fallopian tubes, cervix, and upper third of the vagina. Or I could see Dr. Nori, who did state-of-the-art radiation treatment called brachytherapy. If I had brachytherapy, I might not need surgery at all naturally. I wanted to investigate this option first. After sitting in the waiting room with other patients, many of whom were ill, MC was so nervous that she fainted upon my entrance into the room. All patients are nervous, and this is perfectly normal. Fortunately, few pass out from fright. Fortunately, a few pass out from fright. The nurse and I revived her, and then we discussed her case. As she recalls, after a careful exam, Dr. Nori faced me, looked me directly in the eye, and said simply and directly, "You have cancer, but there is a cure." It was the first time a doctor had actually said the word cure, and that was loud enough. He went on to tell me that I had a rare form of cancer called adenocarcinoma of the cervix. He told me that the treatment I would have was not experimental, that it was in fact a routine procedure and he was very experienced with it, and that in cases like mine, the cure rate could be in excess of 90%. I liked these odds and suddenly felt more in control. I successfully completed my treatment under Dr. Nori and have been free of cancer for over 37 years. Nervousness, dread, and even terror, as MC, the patient who fainted in the examination room, experienced, are entirely valid and understandable. In most cases, however, the numbness wears off and the kaleidoscope of emotions, as one of my patients called it, resolves, at least to a manageable level. Enough at least to allow patients to engage in an intensive re-evaluation of their lives and to seek as much information as they can in a very short time. These patients all went to have brachytherapy as a sole treatment or as a boost to external beam radiation. Their letters and many others I have received also contain descriptions of their treatment and recovery, as well as reports of their lives after cancer. These letters have been gratifying for me to read because they offer concrete testimony about the importance of brachytherapy in cancer treatment. The significant advantages of my research in brachytherapy have been very fruitful. When a person is diagnosed with cancer and potentially deadly heart disease, there are certain feelings of intense isolation and disassociation. At a time when comfort is needed, these feelings can begin a cycle of unfamiliar feelings that can do so overwhelming that it prevents one from taking the steps necessary to carefully evaluate all the treatment options. Many patients have told me that one of the things that helped them overcome the shock of their diagnosis was to find out as much about cancer and their treatment options as they could. MAC from Puerto Rico. MAC, a well known Puerto Rican journalist and TV personality, was diagnosed with cervical cancer when she was 34 years old. She recalls that a gynecologist who is a neighbor and friend came to her house after supper and gave her and her parents the bad news. That night for me the world turned upside down. The atmosphere had a strange silence, and I felt as if I had fallen into a void. I looked at my parents and my doctor and saw their lips moving, but I could not hear a thing they were saying. What they were saying was that I had cervical cancer, that I must have a hysterectomy. Puerto Rico is always warm, but right then I felt so cold. And I will be honest, at that moment I did not know what hurt more, that I had a malignant tumor in my uterus, or that I would never be able to realize my most cherished dream of having children. Then she remembers asking an absurd question. Could the hysterectomy wait for 9 months? Her gynecologist told her that the surgery needed to be done as soon as tests revealed whether the cancer had spread. She underwent hysterectomy in her country, and unfortunately, the cancer recurred when she came to see me. I treated MAC for recurrence after she had a hysterectomy for cervical cancer. After her recovery, she wrote to me about a strategy for survival. When I first saw Dr. Nori for treatment of my recurrence, I was very dejected. But he and his associates studied my case carefully and explained everything to me. I felt a strong urge to take control and they encouraged me to do so. Together, we would work for my healing. The treatment that they recommended there was external beam radiation and brachytherapy. I was aghast because it would require me to stay in New York for many weeks away from my family and fiance. So Dr. Nori designed my therapy plan and then it sent to my doctors in it was sent to my doctors in Puerto Rico. Meanwhile, I had found a marvelous book, Getting Well Again by Dr. O. Carl Simonton. It gave me the necessary tools to begin my journey on the road to recovery. The first lesson of the book is that we're all participants in our own health. We're all participants in our own health. Finding the right doctor is only part of the process. We participate in our health through our beliefs, feelings, emotions, and attitudes towards life. How we respond to medical treatment can be influenced by our belief in it and the trust we have in our doctors. Research has shown that negative emotions produce chemical changes in the body, and Dr. Simonton and other experts on healing argue that positive emotions can produce helpful chemical changes. Love, hope, faith, laughter, and the will to live have therapeutic value. I repeat this: love, hope, faith, laughter, and the will to live have therapeutic value. But for most cancer patients, this is no easy order. I have to admit that there were days when I just could not see the value of this, but as I began to take control of my emotions and concentrated on taking an active role in my treatment, I simply felt better. I always wanted to know what would be done to me and the details of how and why. I read every book about cancer I could find, including weighty medical volumes. I memorized my medical records and discussed them with the residents and interns. Laughter also played an important part in my recuperation. Many people believe that laughter is an infallible remedy, and at my house, we have a healthy dose of it since my mother is a professional comedian. Although we were not always in the mood for jokes, it was rare that she could not coax a laugh out of us. During my treatment, I began to imitate Dr. Nori's Indian accent, and I am sure that he could do the same with my Puerto Rican laced English. One day I did it for him, a simple rectal examination. I began. He laughed very hard and asked me to do it again whenever I saw him for follow up. My doctors in Puerto Rico were surprised at my recuperation and asked me what I had done. I told them that I received my treatment from Dr. Nouri at MSK Cancer Center. But they were not surprised as they knew about Dr. Nouri and his expertise. It has been more than 30 years since the day I learned I had cancer. I will always live with that word in my mind. Just seeing it in print makes me jump. I will always live with the fear of recurrence, but this fear is overshadowed by what I learned from my encounters with cancer. I learned the meaning of unconditional love from my family, and I learned that the will to live is not just a phrase, it is a reality that can heal. MAC was a star patient, and her multifaceted strategy and assertiveness no doubt played an important role in her recovery. SJK from India. Over the years, I have had a number of patients from India who referred to me by doctors I know here. One SJK came to see me in the early 1980s. SJK used her training as a star athlete to overcome her fears and work with her treatment team. More than 40 years after her treatment, she wrote her experiences as follows. More than 40 years. When I was 50 years old, my doctor called me at home to give me the results of DMC, dilation and curettage, and curettage. She had done to me, she had done on me the week before. Casually, as if she were telling me about tomorrow's weather, she told me that I needed a hysterectomy. I took the news casually at first. Both my mother and my sister had had this operation, so I suggested that I do it after my son's exams were over. No, she said a bit more urgently. You have cancer, and we should attack it within 24 hours. Suddenly, I felt the enormity of the test results. I had been invaded by this scary disease which devastates its victims unmercifully. Outwardly, the 24 hours passed in an ordered manner. I packed my clothes, did some necessary chores, spoke to my family, but inwardly I was in turmoil. People and events in my life whirled around in my brain like a kaleidoscope. I felt that I had let my family down in so many ways and that I could have been a better employee at my job. I felt as if I had been thrown into a huge ocean and had to fight not to go under. I had been a competitive netball, volleyball player in college and replayed certain games my team lost in my head. That day I vowed, with all that I held holy, that if I survived and had a second chance, I would fix things I could fix in my life and forget about those that I couldn't. Eventually the time arrived, and so on and so on that memorable weekend in December 1981, instead of attending the wedding day of the child of one of my closest friends, I was wheeled into the operating room to have my uterus removed. I have no doubt that my participation in competitive sports helped me succeed in surviving cancer. First, it armed me with a will to succeed. My training helped me to focus on a goal, to block out distractions, and to pursue the goal with single minded passion. My philosophy, developed from years of athletic activity, was and is come what may, I will prevail. Come what may, I will prevail. Years of competitive sports taught me how to work with a team, and this concept helped me enormously when I arrived in New York for my abrasive therapy treatment. I saw myself as a key member of a team and believed that if I did not figure out my part and carry out my part of the game plan, we, I, might not win. Many people believe in fate, a tryst with destiny, happenstance. I certainly do. I have read a book, The Celestine Prophecies by James Redfield, about how incidents in life weave themselves into patterns long before certain events fall into place. My fate and I believe my salvation was to meet Dr. Nori. He was there, somehow chosen for me, and he played a very essential role in my survival for more than 3 decades now. I was alone with a dreaded disease in a very imposing hospital on a in a strange place. In the first few days, I clung to the idea that I was here for an essential reason, to be treated for this scary disease. Soon, however, Dr. Nori's calm, firm gentleness calmed my fears. At his invitation, I joined the treatment team, and together we won a really challenging game. When I was in New York, alone in my room at night, I vividly remember the love of my friends at home from India, and frequently their letters and phone calls cheered me up when I was feeling homesick. I used my time alone to think about what I would do with the rest of my life, however long it was, and it has turned out to be long indeed. I was able to take care of my beloved mother for 3 more years until she died in 1984. I saw both of my sons graduating from college and take advanced degrees. I was alive to attend the wedding of my youngest son in 1984. Finally, I was able to care for my husband when he underwent heart bypass surgery in 1995. There's so much to live for that you just can't contemplate dying, not for 1 minute. Like MAC and SJK, many patients find that the idea of being a member of a team is both comforting and empowering. It banishes the feeling that you're playing an unfair game all alone and gives you the idea that with the help of your doctor and radiation team and the love of your family and friends, you can win in a challenging situation. ZR from Israel. My patient ZR also drew courage and sustenance from friends and turned her time to New York City into a rewarding adventure. She also found that being assertive about her needs to her treatment team made a significant difference in her treatment experience. ZR wrote, being a logical person, I asked myself if I wanted to die one day before I absolutely had to. Of course not. After a long talk with myself, I decided to make the best of the 2 months I would have to stay in New York City. In fact, I consciously decided to make the best of the rest of my life. My three daughters came to be with me, and together we went to the theater, concerts, and movies. I had a number of friends in New York, so we made dates with them for dinner in the evenings. It has been over 30 years since I was treated for my locally advanced gynecological cancer, and back then, it seems like 1,000 years ago. Most people were ashamed of having cancer, and many kept it a secret even from close friends. For me, my friends are a very important part of my life, and I couldn't have gotten the warmth and attention that I received if I had kept my illness from them. I sensed, however, that I had to keep up my part of the bargain. If I was depressed, it would depress them, and no one would have a very good time. So I decided not to be depressed. Just making the decision made me less depressed. Before going to meet Dr. Nori at MSK Cancer Center in the US, I had gotten a second opinion in the UK and other major cancer centers in the US. All the specialists I had met suggested to me to meet Dr. Nori as he had developed cutting edge and innovative treatment methods for these advanced cancers. The treatment team at the hospital were tremendous and cheered me up at every treatment session. I told them that I didn't like wearing a hospital gown for my treatments. I felt very helpless and began to feel anxious while waiting for my turn on the treatment table. They acknowledged that the radiation works the same whether it's going through a hospital gown or a cotton dress and allowed me to have treatment in my street clothes. This was really a little thing that I would have endured. But being assertive about my anxiety and asking for something that was not routine made me feel so much more in control. Another thing that bothered me was that sometimes I and other patients had to wait what seemed like a long time if there was a delay in the treatment schedule. I told them I made every effort to get to my daily appointments on time and I felt cheated if I had to wait for a long time. One of the nurses suggested that I call the receptionist and find out if appointments were running on time. If the schedule was delayed, then I could have some additional time to myself. Both of these minor alterations in the normal routine were enormously helpful to me. After 2 months of external beam treatment and brachytherapy, I returned home to continue my normal life. I paid special attention to my appearance because I surmised everyone expected to see a corpse. But in many respects, life after treatment was not normal. I appreciated life more than ever before, and took nothing for granted. Every beautiful sunset, every moonlit night, every trip I took, every party I went to gave me 10 times more pleasure. Today, when there is a family gathering on birthday, I am so grateful to God, to medical science, and to Dr. Nori for the wonderful present he gave me, life. In the past 34 years, I have seen three of my four children get married, and I have been blessed with two gorgeous granddaughters. I became chairman of an investment company that provides fascinating work for me. I hope that my experience provides encouragement to others who are going through a similar experience. If you are as frightened and surprised as I was, don't feel alone. If you thought, how could this happen to me? Others have been there. If you are bewildered and overwhelmed by so much medical information that seems written in a foreign language, take heart. Do your research as quickly and efficiently as you can. Make sure that You are at the best hospital you can find for your particular problem and take the time to find the best doctor to do the job, like Dr. Nori. Then trust your doctor to do the best job possible and become an active member of your treatment team. There is life after treatment. It may be for you as it was for me. The sweetest part, you cannot believe how wonderful life feels. We are married now 60 years and 33 of it is due to the miracle of your work. NB from US. I treated NB for recurrence of vaginal melanoma in 1980s and again in 1996. And as she remembers, I was stunned, numb, incapable of even asking questions. I wished I had let someone go with me to my appointment, but I had rejected this idea as childish. I was an intelligent and independent adult, I thought, and asked myself, why would I need anyone to go to the doctor with me? Initially, her doctor recommended radical surgery to remove not only the tumor but her uterus and most of her vagina, rectum, and bladder as well. During that very long weekend after my diagnosis, it was a question of whether or not to accept what I saw as mutilation or do nothing and die of the melanoma. I was 61, not all that thrilled with my life, and I wondered why I should put myself through such a drastic operation and its aftermath. How one functioned with practically nothing left below the waist, along with incontinence, possible digestive problems, and no sexual feeling defied contemplation. On the other hand, how was it going to be to die of cancer? That too defied contemplation. After further tests, NB's oncologist told her that her condition was not quite as cut and dry as he had originally believed, and he referred her to me for an assessment. I shall never forget that meeting. At that conclusion, Dr. Nori said, since this would be radical surgery, I could try radiation if you agree. If I agreed. So, I had 6 weekly treatments of brachytherapy on an outpatient basis, and at the end, the melanoma was gone. No nausea, no mutilation. It would be an understatement to say that I was extremely grateful. She was free of cancer for more than 3 decades after treatment. All the above mentioned individuals continue to be hale and healthy and free from cancer today. The conclusion is very simple. After a century of experimentation, innovation, and refinement, radiation therapy has fulfilled its initial promise to save or prolong many lives that would otherwise be lost to cancer. But healing and survival often require more than technology. They take confidence, more than a little determination, hope, and the will to live as long and as well as possible.